Hello, my name is Shayna, and this is the first episode of my podcast titled Catharsis Ink, where I delve into all things writing, literature, art, cinema, and anywhere my inner musings take me. And on this first episode, I'll be delving into the art of diary writing, as well as giving a review of Madly Deeply by Alan Rickman. So without further ado, let's get into it. I'm a writer, and writing has been a passion of mine since elementary school when I first started keeping a diary. Through the years, those diaries have gotten lost or thrown out. However, I do have diaries from throughout my 20s and now my 30s, but I've never really been a religious diary writer. Honestly, for years, it was always a form of release, and I'd only write in it when I was upset. Despite the thought of wanting to write in it other times, it just never occurred. But for the past handful of years, I've made it a point to write about the happy times and the mundane, as well as the sad, irritating, and devastating times. And not only has it lent me a release and contributed to my writing experience, but these diaries are becoming a tome of my history, my existence, and who I am as a person. The word diary comes from the Latin word diarium, meaning daily allowance, and also from the word dies, meaning day. The earliest recorded use of the word diary to refer to a book in which daily record was written was in Ben Jonson's comedy Volpone in 1605. Diaries are valuable historical documents. They are honest and routinely generated and bring us closer to ordinary people and everyday life as it was really lived than any other kind of document. The earliest known book resembling a diary was the Diary of Mir, an ancient Egyptian logbook whose author described the transportation of limestone from Tura de Giza, which was likely to clad the outside of the Great Pyramid. Also, the oldest extant diaries come from Middle Eastern and East Asian cultures, although the even earlier work called To Myself, which is today known as the Meditations, written in Greek by the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius in the second half of the 2nd century AD, already displays many characteristics of a diary. Also, pillow books of Japanese court ladies and Asian travel journals offer some aspects of this genre of writing as well, although they rarely consist exclusively of diary records. Then, in the medieval era, diaries were used by mystics to record spiritual interpretations of daily events, and during the Renaissance period, people began keeping diaries as a way to express their opinions without any intention of one day publishing their writings. However, the art of diary keeping didn't become popular until the 18th century, when the peak reached its pinnacle during the Victorian era. And while diaries were usually meant to record the private thoughts of the writer, they now give us important insights into historical events and the everyday life of the culture in which the writer lived. Examples of this are the published diaries of Charles Darwin, Mark Twain, Anne Frank, and Sylvia Plath, just to name a few. And one of the more recent published diaries I've read is Madly Deeply by Alan Rickman, which was published in 2022 and includes diary entries from his life from 1993 to 2015. Now, I first fell in love with Alan Rickman as a child while watching Harry Potter, of course, and who wouldn't? He was absolutely perfect for that role. However, the person I imagined him to be in real life is not who I expected, and I think this happens a lot with actors in general, but I feel as though this is also a great sign of acting, but while reading his diary entries, I got a feel for the person behind the screen. He was a sarcastic, funny, forthright man who was really passionate about what he did.
There will be no foolish wand-waving or silly incantations in this class. As such, I don't expect many of you to appreciate the subtle science and exact art that is potion making. However, for those select few who possess the predisposition. I can teach you how to bewitch the mind and ensnare the senses. I can tell you how to bottle fame, brew glory, and even put a stopper in death.
Now, I'm the type of reader that likes to annotate and tab the book as I read. And let me just say, I tabbed the heck out of this book because I found Alan Rickman's writing to be so intelligent and witty, and it was definitely worth remembering. And there are some entries that are so tragically beautiful at times, like the passage when he's at his mother's deathbed. He writes, February 14th, 1997. Mom asked for a photo of all of us. Polaroid, the only word to spring to mind. Some value from yesterday's lunchtime trip. At Dixon's. Bought a Polaroid, took the photos, put them in plastic frames, propped them up on the cabinet after Mom watched them developing. Sheila gets the Polaroid camera as a birthday gift. Writing this in the welcome peace of the lunchtime sleep break. Lights out, curtain drawn, only the insistent buzz and burr of the nebulizers and oxygen masks around the ward. Mom's eyes open and close, her chest rises and falls, all of it inventing a rhythm moment by moment. Another entry that I found to be tragically beautiful was his entry on May 13th, 2012. He writes, Toronto. Leaving New York this time, it is hard to shake off a dull, blurred feeling of having been the victim of a quiet but organized abuse. I dare say, as ever, it will turn into something muscle-strengthening, but at the moment I feel diminished by averted eyes, and somewhere there are others that are like gimlets with very tight smiles. And then there were times that he had me physically laughing out loud by his entries, like the time that he was filming Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. He writes, September 28th, 2004. HP. 7:55 pickup. Smacking the backs of Daniel Radcliffe and Rupert Grint's heads. Doubtless a fuss will ensue about corporal punishment. While reading that entry, I could actually visualize that scene playing in my head. I absolutely love it. Oh my gosh, I was laughing so hard. But then he also has the thought-provoking passages as well, like his entry on September 7th, 1994. He writes, The walls we are surrounded by, the objects we fill the spaces with, the lives they all describe. It's so amazing to me how one simple sentence could be so beautiful and thought-provoking. After I read this sentence, I stopped reading for a while and just contemplated life. And everywhere that I've been and every object that I've ever owned, and just how those things have all played a part in my life. Like, holy cow, this sentence is so deep and philosophical, and I absolutely love it. But despite this personal peek into his life, Alan Rickman was careful and secretive in certain matters as well, which he actually references in one of his entries. He writes, March 21st, 2000. 4:45 pickup to Hamburg Airport and the 6:10ish flight to London. Later, at home, reading an old journal, stuff from 20 years ago. Scary. And also looking at excerpts from Sylvia Plath's journal. My old one is very pre-movies, pre-interviews, and pre those more recent books. Much more naked. I can only hope that when I look again at the 90s volumes, that I can remember the coded details and the sharp thoughts hidden between the safer lines. And I'd have to say I am the same way in my journal writing, but when I was younger, I would tell all in my writing, and my trust was repeatedly broken by curious minds and peeping eyes. So now that I'm older, I'm more hesitant in my diary entries, which I think kind of hinders one in a way, because I feel like I'm holding back when I could be, more forthright and more opinionated. And I just think my writing would be better as well if I didn't have that fear. Are you a free writer, or do you use your coded details like Alan Rickman does? Or do you just skirt around secret details like me? Let me know in the comments. Also, throughout his entries, he is actively filming and performing in plays, obviously. So while reading, I wanted to watch as many of the films he was referencing as possible. I found it to be such a unique experience to be watching a film where I had just read the actor's behind the scenes take of the film, his character, the director, and the other cast. Alan was known to be difficult at times because he was so passionate about the character he was playing and the script at hand. So several times he got in heated arguments with certain directors and would vent these feelings in his entries. So it was really interesting to see that. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to watch everything he referenced because it isn't available to stream, but I did watch Mesmer, Sense and Sensibility, Michael Collins, Sweeney Todd, Perfume, The Story of a Murder, which was a wild movie. The Song of Lunch, which is a short TV movie and was actually probably one of my favorites. A Little Chaos, and of course the Harry Potter movies, but those are just to name a few. So if you ever get the chance to watch something after you are actively reading the diary entries of an actor or actress, definitely do it, because it is such a unique, cool experience. And as a side note, I also learned that Alan Rickman held artistic abilities. His diaries were scattered with gorgeous drawings and doodles, and we're actually able to get a glimpse of that in the center spread of the book and on the inside cover and the back cover. So if you're ever able to get a copy of this book, I'll leave a link to the Amazon link down in the podcast notes, or you can, just go to your local library and just browse the book. But definitely check out these drawings, because he did drawings that coordinated with his entries, and they're absolutely beautiful. Then sadly, towards the end of the book, Alan's entries become exceedingly shorter and direct as his health worsens from pancreatic cancer, and his entries come to an abrupt halt on December 12th, 2015. He sadly passed away in the hospital almost a month to the day later on January 14th, 2016. And I'll admit, only 3 celebrity deaths have really hit me hard, and his was one of them. His talent and passion were unmatchable, and the light that he provided in the movie world will forever be dim without him. But to end on a positive note, the editor also includes early diary entries that showcase Alan's early acting career from 1974 to 1982. And these were far and few between because he only kept occasional diary entries at this point. But in my opinion, they are pure gold, and his passion for acting definitely shines through, like his first entry in 1974. He writes, "Fine acting always hits an audience with the force and oneness of the well-aimed bomb. One is only aware of the blast or series of blasts at the time. Afterwards, you can study the devastation or think about how a bomb is made. And yet, no analogy suffices. The chemistry is too variable to construct an equation. An actor is about the only artist whose instrument is himself. And his instrument is not just for practice and performance. He has to place and use it in his life too. Has to construct a life in which to practice and present that instrument, and his only means is the instrument himself. Menhuin sounds a gong for dinner. He doesn't play it on his Stradivarius. The Stradivarius is polished and locked away in velvet. The actor's instrument is fed intermittently and travels on tube trains in the rush hour. Fine acting is a bloody miracle of chance, the most fragile blending of time, mood, talent, and trust. Too often, all we present is an attempted repeat of a hazy memory of the once we thought we almost made it. Oh my gosh, I absolutely love that. Now for my book rating. I feel weird rating a person's diary, but alas, it was published. But you've probably already guessed my rating is a 5 stars. It's such a beautiful read, and even if you don't like Alan as an actor, I'd still recommend it because based on his diary entries, you can tell he was an amazing person and there's a lot to learn from him. But that is it for this episode. I hope you all enjoyed my inner musings on the art of diary writing, as well as my review of Madly Deeply by Alan Rickman. Be sure to stay tuned for episode 2 because I will be talking about my 5-year, 1 sentence a day journal, how the heck I was able to do it for 5 years straight every single day, and I'll also be reading some of my journal entries. So I will see you in the next one. Thanks everyone. Bye.